Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to our first Ignite. This is Ignite IAG. It's taken us 150 years to get there, but we're there. My name's Craig Roberts. I'm a senior lecturer at University of New South Wales, and Chris Rizos is my boss. And I want to thank Ruth Neilan and her team for inviting me to MC this very first event. It's going to be interesting. I want to talk a little bit about what Ignite is, but before I do, I had a bit of an idea while I was walking up the Telegraphenberg Hill with Alison Keeley, and we thought that, you know, IAG is always an important meeting and we do important things, so I thought that maybe one thing that I've noticed that we haven't done as an IAG resolution, I think we know where the centre of the Earth is, I think we know where the pole is, I think we've agreed on an ellipsoid, but one thing that we haven't agreed on is a collective noun for a geodesist. So, for instance, in English we would say a flock of seagulls. I think in German you might say eine Gruppe Möwe. Yeah? Gruppe, kind of not such an interesting word. A flock or a herd of cattle. Or a mob of kangaroos, I might say that in Australia. We have interesting ones like a pride of lions. What's a murder of crows? It's a collective noun. And I wondered, as a IAG, I think we do not have a collective noun for geodesists. So I'm not looking for an answer now, but I'd like to put forward a proposal for a resolution that people might like to get their business card and write a suggestion for a collective noun for geodesists, and they can give it to the ladies at the desk back at the Doran Hotel, and the president of the IAG can maybe choose it, and perhaps on Friday we can settle upon a collective noun for geodesists. So that's just something, as a hint, an idea that the leading one at the moment comes from Alison, and that is a constellation of geodesists. What do you think? This guy's been to Ignite before. That's exactly what Ignite is all about. So now I'd like to talk to you about Ignite. Firstly, show of hands, how many people have been to an Ignite event before? Okay, good, a few people have, and a lot of people haven't. Has anyone seen a TED Talk before? Maybe a lot more people have seen a TED Talk online. It's that sort of idea. It's supposed to be a creative way of expressing a story, an idea, and obviously we're going to be talking about geodesy, and we've got 6 eminent geodesists sitting on death row, in a row, ready to present. It's quite a rigid format though. I'm a lecturer, it's very easy for me to stand there for 50 minutes and drone on. Many of you have given a presentation for 15 minutes at this event, and you realise it's very hard to compress all of your work into 15 minutes, very difficult. Spare a thought for these folks. They've got 5 minutes and 20 slides. So they've prepared 20 slides which will automatically change up there. And they can't do anything about it. Once it starts, they've got to keep up. And they've got to present their story to you in 5 minutes. So the good thing about that is, if it's terrible, you only have to wait 5 minutes. But it's a good... Anyway, so that's the format that they've subjected themselves to, okay? So they've been practicing in front of the mirror and trying to do a really, really good job for you. So please spare a thought for them, and this is a positive event, okay? There's got to be a lot of love in the room, so if they start losing it or something, you need to encourage, okay? And that could be in various forms. I'll leave it to you as to how you might like to encourage. But I think we're going to hear some terrific stories. So, right, enough of me anyway. Look, we've tried to choose folks from the 4 corners of the globe. And I guess that's a blasphemous thing to say at a geodesy conference, right? Because if you've got 4 corners, then you've got a tetrahedron. And when you put the pole on the equator, it's just... But anyway, so look, our first speaker comes from the African vertice of the tetrahedron. And I thought it was best to start at the start tonight. Now, he's given me a little bio, and it says he is currently a GUP, which is gainfully unemployed person, as he retired from service about a month ago. He says that he now mows the lawn and does other odd jobs around the house as directed by his boss. And in his former life, he was closely involved with the African Geodetic Reference Frame Project, AFREF, the IAG, the IGS, and many other such crazies. And Richard, you ready to go? Your presentation is from Egypt to Geogos in 5 minutes. Ladies and gentlemen, Richard Wonacott. Our next speaker, the title of his talk is Some Observations on the IAG's History, Same but Different. And if you've been to Asia, you understand that that's very Asian. I think that's the part where it starts and finishes with regard to Asia. But Chris comes from Australia, and we have a great affinity with Asia. And we have many Asian geodesists coming by our university, and we have great connections there. So, look, I have to say that I've known this next speaker now for almost 20 years. He completed his PhD in 1980. He won the Alexander von Humboldt Scholarship that started his love affair with Germany and Munich. He refers to Munich as his second home. He's since authored and co-authored over 500 papers, supervised numerous research students, myself being one of them. He's led countless research projects. And look, his German may have gotten a little bit rusty, but he's fluent in geodesy. And ladies and gentlemen, I'm delighted to present your president and mine, Chris Rizos. Okay, our next speaker, I'm not sure, I think our next speaker might be a little bit confused. See, this is the International Association of Geodesy conference. And he sent me his biography, and I had a quick read of it, and it said, Christian Heipke is a professor in photogrammetry and remote sensing from Leibniz University. And I'm thinking, is there one of those conferences down the road? Maybe he got the wrong address. But I was sort of too embarrassed to say anything, so I kept reading, and I found out that he's won this Otto von Gruber Award and the Fred Doyle Award, and he's written more than 300 papers, and he chairs the German Geodetic Commission. And he's got interests in understanding a connection between computer vision and GIS, and I thought, well, maybe it's us geodesists that have got something to learn from this guy. So I actually got pretty excited. So our next speaker is from the European corner of the world, is Professor Christian Heipke, and his presentation, and hopefully it starts, is the curious name, Formal Greetings Under Sudden External Constraints. Christian Heipke. All right, our next speaker hardly needs an introduction, but I'm going to do one anyway. We're going to stay in Europe for a little bit longer, and our next speaker is coming from Paris, from IGN, and we all know him and we all love him. And we love him because he makes our life easier. Yeah? He makes this datum that we all use and love, and he makes our life easier. But you know, poor Zuheir, he's always cleaning up after us. No sooner has he finished making his first datum, or his last datum, than someone says, oh Zuheir, I found another way of defining the geocenter. Oh, I forgot about that satellite antenna face center thing that we're going to have to reprocess. Oh, Zuheir, co-location of marks, we're going to have to... And Zuheir quietly goes off to his computer, selflessly recomputes another datum that we all use and abuse. He must feel like the maid, you know, constantly cleaning up after us all the time. But anyway, it's our time for a bit of payback in the form of raucous applause and cheering, because I'd like to welcome to the stage the research director at the IGN, the background warrior for GEGOS, Zuheir Altamimi, and his talk, Dr. GEGOS and the Patient ITRF. We're going to go to the Australian corner of the globe now. I know you love Australia because it's this sort of harmless island somewhere down in the South Pacific. 10,000 beaches, the sun always shines, everyone's happy, funny little furry marsupials hopping around, you know. And, well, I've come all the way from Australia and I brought one with me. I got the perfect specimen for you next. He's good looking, he's intelligent, like most Australian males, quick-witted, pretty handy in a fist fight. He's also a group leader of the Earth Monitoring Hazards Group at Geoscience Australia. He's a member of the IGS governing board. Oh, look, and just lots and lots of other things. I'm going to present to you now Gary Johnston presenting Australia and GEOS.
Thanks, Craig. I'm sure this would have been easier 6 beers ago. I am Australian, so we'll see how we go.
Microphone, and so I want to tell you a little story because they gave me a microphone. It was a long time ago, back in the early 90s. I was a young surveyor. I had a girlfriend from Algoy, and yes, she was even better looking than the cows. And I was, that's what they say in Algoy, right? And I was learning German in the pub with my mates, and I thought I needed to get a haircut and get a job, so I had worked at UNAVCO previously, and so I thought I'd ring up the GFZ on spec, just cold call them and see if there's a job for me. And luckily for me, I rang up here and they were going to do the Geodesy campaign in Indonesia. And their field man, Jürgen Klotz, had unfortunately hurt his back and they needed someone fairly short notice. Could I get to Potsdam tomorrow for an interview? Yes, I said, put down the phone and thought, gee, how am I going to get 600 kilometres in 15 hours? Well, I found myself walking through the door in Telegrafenberg and meeting a fellow called Christoph Reitber. Now, I'd heard of him and I knew he was important, and I thought, I better make sure I get this right, you know, so I practiced a sentence which went something along the lines of Herr Reitber, ich entschuldige mich, falls ich Sie duze. Which translates into English as, Mr. Reitber, I apologise in case I say you to you. In German, you see they have Sie for formal, you, and anyway. I didn't want to make a mistake. Now, the response from Professor Reitber was, why don't we just do the interview in English, which was a huge relief to me. And then he set about telling me that this was Helmut's desk and office, and this is Telegrafenberg, and he showed me around, and he was the most wonderful, warm, welcoming man, and I thought, my God, this is terrific, you know. This was my first impression of Professor Reitber. Now, I told you that story because I'm going to introduce our next speaker, who's Ruth Neilan. Now, Ruth, I think we met in UNAVCO, but I've seen you at many conferences and events and meetings. Ruth is everywhere. We all love Ruth. We know that Ruth's the director of the IGS, and you're also the vice president of GEOS, and many, many other things. And Ruth's going to wrap it up tonight with her presentation entitled O Spiritus Ignitus, Visions of Christoph Reitber von München.